good people are idiots, the idea that good people are dismissed or even ridiculed as idiots is at the very core of Dostoevsky's novel, The Idiot. This wasn't just a random theme he threw in. It came from his own struggles, his suffering, and his reflections on morality. He poured all of that into this book. At its heart, The Idiot is an antidote to the pain of excessive consciousness, that relentless awareness of human suffering, and the impossible task of remaining truly good in a flawed world. But it's not just about goodness. Dostoevsky cracks open the door and forces us to look at the harsh realities of life: greed, selfishness, and the misuse of free will. And he doesn't just criticize society. He challenges us. Why? Why do people make these choices? What's driving this chaos? We're going to explore all of that in this video. But first, if you're enjoying this deep dive into classic literature, make sure to support the channel by subscribing. It really helps get these discussions to more people who love literature as much as you do. All right, back to the story. The chaos begins. A train, a prince, and society's sharks. The novel opens on a train. Prince Myshkin, our protagonist, is returning to Russia after years in a Swiss sanatorium where he was being treated for epilepsy, just like Dostoevsky himself. On the journey, he meets two men who embody everything he isn't. First, there's Parfen Rogozhin, a man who just inherited a fortune and is obsessed with a woman named Nastasia Filipovna. Then there's Lebedev, a self-serving, manipulative man who thrives on stirring trouble. Myshkin, in contrast, is pure, almost naive, untouched by the cynical power games these men play. When he arrives in St. Petersburg, Myshkin visits General Yapanchin, a distant relative, and meets his youngest daughter, Aglaya. She's brilliant, beautiful, and immediately intrigued by Myshkin's innocence. But then there's Nastasia Filipovna, the woman at the heart of this storm. Her life has been shaped by trauma. She was groomed by a wealthy, corrupt man, Totsky, who now wants to discard her by marrying her off to Ganya, a man obsessed with social climbing. At a party, everything erupts into chaos. Rogozhin, in a moment of madness, offers Nastasia 100,000 rubles, essentially buying her. Instead of accepting, she takes the money and throws it into the fire, exposing the corruption around her. But then Myshkin, in a move only he would make, steps forward and proposes to her, not out of passion, but out of a sincere desire to save her. No conditions, no judgment, just love. But Nastasia, unable to accept such pure kindness, runs off with Rogozhin instead. The destruction of pure goodness. Myshkin's goodness is both his greatest strength and his ultimate downfall. His newfound relatives, upon learning of his inheritance, circle him like vultures. Instead of rejecting them, he offers financial help. Meanwhile, Aglaya is drawn to him, but resents him for his unwavering kindness. She can't understand why he continues to help those who mistreat him. She wants strength, someone who will stand up for himself, and Myshkin, despite his noble soul, is not that man. The final unraveling comes when Myshkin and Nastasia finally decide to marry. But on the wedding day, she panics. Convinced she doesn't deserve his love, she flees again, this time with Rogozhin. And this time Rogozhin's obsession turns deadly. In a fit of jealousy and madness, he kills her. When Myshkin finds him, Rogozhin is sitting with Nastasia's lifeless body, overwhelmed with grief. And what does Myshkin do? He sits beside him, comforts him, and wipes his tears. This is the same man who tried to kill Myshkin earlier in the novel. But Myshkin forgives, always forgives, and in the end, it destroys him. Society, unable to comprehend his purity, breaks him. He returns to the sanatorium, while everyone else is left to deal with the wreckage of their own making. Is being good a path to ruin? There's a lot to take away from The Idiot, but for me, one of the most striking ideas is that being too good can actually ruin you. Dostoevsky presents Myshkin as a Christ-like figure, a holy fool. He is all kindness, no malice. And yet this kind of goodness doesn't get you far in the real world. His relatives try to rob him. Rogojin literally tries to kill him. Aglaya resents him, and through it all, Myshkin forgives. Every time. Aglaya, in her frustration, even calls him an idiot, not because he lacks intelligence, but because he refuses to stand up for himself. Society isn't built for people like Myshkin. He doesn't play the power games, and that makes him an easy target. In the modern world, this is even more apparent. Intelligence, cunning, and a degree of self-interest are necessary for survival. That doesn't mean one has to be ruthless, but it does mean setting boundaries. Being good doesn't mean letting yourself be used. This actually reminds me of Machiavelli's and Nietzsche's critiques of excessive idealism. Both argue against the idea that reason and virtue alone can guide us, insisting that instincts and pragmatism are just as crucial. And while I don't fully subscribe to Nietzsche's extreme take, he has a point. There must be balance. Kindness, logic, instinct, and when necessary, firmness. And that's what Dostoevsky captures so brilliantly in The Idiot. Life is messy, painful, and often cruel. But it's also beautiful in its chaos, the unpredictability of human emotions and the contradictions that define us. Free will and the tragedy of choice. One of the most fascinating aspects of The Idiot is how no one in it seems to truly know what they want. They're constantly at war with themselves, torn between their desires, societal expectations, and their own inner turmoil. Nastasia swings between self-destruction and longing for love. Aglaya is drawn to Myshkin, but resents his passive nature. Rogojin worships Nastasia, but ends up destroying her. Their unpredictability isn't just character inconsistency. It's Dostoevsky, holding up a mirror to real life. People are complicated, driven by conflicting emotions and irrational impulses. And then there's Myshkin, the one truly good person, the one who tries to rise above it all. And what does the world do? It crushes him. Not because he was wrong, but because society doesn't know what to do with someone like him. In the end, The Idiot is a brutally honest portrayal of life, its suffering, its contradictions, and the limitations of pure goodness. Dostoevsky doesn't give us neat resolutions, only the unsettling truth. In a world built on self-interest, can true goodness survive? That's the question we're left with. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real tragedy of it all.